This clip is from my show AFC North Talk that I do with Sonny, Ace, and J Rock. Make sure you guys check this clip out where we're talking about the AFC North. Also, if you want to see the full clip, it's available at AFC North Talk on YouTube. So check it out.
Again, Ace, I'll be a little worried. 2-1 Andy Dalton against the Bengals. Revenge game. You know, Andy Dalton, even though it happened years ago, he still circles that game when he can play against his former team, the Bengals, and prove them. Hey, I could still be there and doing my thing. What do you think is going to happen, Ace?
Yeah, with this one, I think the Bengals have to win this game. It's not a question of, can they win this game? It's the season's on the line. So I think looking at the numbers, you do have the Bryce Young factor in there. I don't know if you could just go off of the first game, right? Because some people don't have tape on Andy Dalton and stuff like that. I think it's obvious that he's better than Bryce Young, right? But I think we should pump the brakes because, if he's going to continue to do that, he's going to look like 2015 Andy Dalton at this rate. And I just don't know if, he is that good, but he's definitely going to be out for blood in this game, which I think is what makes it dangerous. And he's going to be hungry for a win. And then you got to also think about outside of just it being the Bengals, this is a guy that doesn't get too many opportunities to start, right? So if he wants a career resurgence on having a job potentially or auditioning for another team next season, I think that this is a game that's important to him. Now, when I look at the numbers, the turnover differential favors Cincinnati fourth, to Carolina being 25th. You talk about the DVOA. The Bengals, even though they've struggled here at 0-3, they are fifth in DVOA for offensive teams. Carolina is 30th. The defense, though, we've talked about how bad the Bengals defense has been, especially after that last performance, 24th in DVOA. Carolina is 21st. So they actually have the worst defense between the two. Both of these teams have struggled on special teams, 28th and 20th. That's something that could be a factor. When you look at EPA, though, that kind of separates these two teams. By EPA, Carolina is ranked last in the NFL at 32nd. Bengals ninth. Passing offense favors the Bengals 5th to 31st. You talk about the pass defense. The interesting thing is, according to the splits, Bengals pass defense is 4th, Carolina is 5th. So that's going to be interesting to see how Carolina utilizes Horn, and are they going to stay in a too high shell? Are they going to double team Jamar Chase given the circumstances? So that's something to keep an eye on. Rushing offense, these two teams aren't really teams that run the ball from what we've seen statistically. Right now, Cincinnati is 26. You talk about Carolina being 21st according to those splits. And then when you're looking at the red zone defense, Carolina is actually pretty good. That's something to keep an eye on because the Bengals have struggled cashing it in the red zone. And then when you look at the Bengals defense in the red zone, it hasn't been good. They're 30th in the NFL. However, the Bengals are 15th in scoring, and then Carolina is last in the league at scoring on offense. But obviously, those are some of the Bryce numbers like we kind of talk about. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. In terms of explosive plays, these two teams are not explosive offenses whatsoever. Bengals right now, 3.5% in explosive plays. Carolina, 5.2% in explosive plays. So neither one of these teams are going to wow you in terms of their explosive plays. The Bengals tried to get some of that back last week with Jamar Chase with 2 of those touchdowns. But outside of that, they haven't really gotten much outside of a Rando, Jermaine Burton touchdown. They're still one of the 7 teams in the league that still don't have a run of 20-plus yards. Are they going to be able to do that since they tried to get the run game going with Chase Brown and Zach Moss? That's yet to be seen. But honestly, this game is going to come down to multiple things. But I think the trenches, you got to win in the trenches. Bengals are banged up right now in the trenches as it sounds. A lot of people talk about defensive tackle, and I get it. The Bengals are the walking wounded at defensive tackle. I'm going to say, like last week, defensive tackle wasn't an issue. To me, it was more of the edge rushers and setting the edge and being able to get pressure on the quarterback. And so I think that that's going to be a factor in this game. But if Quincy is saying that this team is good offensively, I'm going to see what I'm used to seeing. Trey Hendrickson by itself trying to pretty much hold on to this defensive line. But they're going to have to find other ways to get pressure, whether it's blitzes and things of that nature, whether it's from Mike Hilton. Somebody else has got to get some pressure on Andy Dalton, or else he's going to be able to pick you apart. And the interesting thing is I saw that Andy Dalton, although he had a great game last week, when he was under pressure, according to PFF, he was 1 for 5, and he was actually sacked twice in those situations. So you got to get pressure on Andy Dalton. It's another one. You got to
That's the Andy Dalton I remember.
Right, exactly. You gotta win the turnover margin, right? 80% of the time you get the turnover margin, you win the game. Outside of the Chiefs game, I know we won the turnover margin there, but you can't turn the ball over. And you just got to do whatever it takes to get out of here with a win. It doesn't need to be pretty. They can win this one ugly. They just got to get this win. So I'm expecting the Bengals to do that, but I do think that Carolina's going to put up a fight. So I'm going to go with Bengals 27, Carolina 24.
Success rate wise, the Bengals on the defensive side of the ball are 29th. Panthers are 26th. EPA per play wise defensively, Bengals are 30th. Panthers are 28th. So offensively, both teams should be able to have a little bit of success. Especially, I mean, you touched on our days. The offense hasn't really been the problem with the Bengals the past 2 weeks. Burrow and the crew played well last week. It's just the fact that defensively they have a lot to clean up.
Time to run the ball. Time to run the ball. That's what it's time for.
Just as
right?
Triple H's theme song on cue. That's tremendous.
But one thing that did open up for Carolina as well is the Chuba Hubbard had an excellent game last week against the Raiders. Now, again, Raiders project to be the worst run defense in the NFL on like multiple metrics, so that just might be the case. But if they're the worst, the Bengals are certainly in the neighborhood. So it's not out the realm of possibility that the Bengals could struggle to stop the run. And we focus so much on the 92% pass completion percentage that Jaden Daniels had that we didn't really talk about what the most consistent thorn in the side of the Cincinnati Bengals was, especially in the first half of that game, was Austin Eckler looking like he turned back the clock, 5 years back when he was like a fantasy football first-round pick. Yep. And I think that's something to look forward to in this game, right? If Cincinnati can't stop the run, then they're not going to do a good job of muting the score percentage of their opponent, right? I kind of agree with everybody. This is going to be one of those shootouts that doesn't have a shootout score, right? It's going to be like a lot of 12-play drives that are going to like 9 possessions each team, but like really high score percentage on both sides. Probably gets the team that breaks 30 first, probably wins this game. And I think that will be the Cincinnati Bengals. But the real question here is how successful is running the ball going to be for Carolina? If they're able to have massive success running this football in a similar way that Washington did, at least in the first half, and like Cincinnati's run defense is weird because they were actually pretty good in like short situations where they needed to get like a quick stop. They were pretty good at that, but like any other time you ran the ball, they were able to be successful. So I think that's going to be a big thing in this game. If they're leaky in run defense, and what is BJ Hill and Sheldon Rankins, are they back this week, Ace?
Sheldon Rankins is definitely out. I'm going to expect that BJ Hill is out. He's like questionable, but I think it's more doubtful in terms of BJ Hill. I'm expecting both of those guys to be out this week.
Ooh.
Yeah, and that's a big deal, right? Like,
this is a game that I feel like the Steelers defense is just gonna dominate. Even if the offensive line for them plays good, the problem right now for the Colts is not the offensive line. It's that the quarterback, even with time, cannot make the plays. What is your expectation, Jared, for this game?
Yeah, so Anthony Richardson right now, of all quarterbacks who have played at least 50 plays, he is 32 out of 32 in EPA plus CPOE.
Yes, just ugly.
I think I said it, a few days ago. Right now, Anthony Richardson is just Will Levis with better PR. Like everybody makes such a big deal out of like Anthony Richardson because he's like an athletic freak. He can make big time throws downfield. He did it week 1 to Alec Pierce, but bro, he threw. They were in the red zone against Chicago, and he threw it into a Bears meeting room. Just 3 Bears, right? Yeah. No Colts player anywhere in the vicinity. I had no idea what he was doing. That said, like I still think he can be a fine quarterback. This is only his 7th start in the NFL.
He's essentially a rookie.
Still very young, so like I don't think he's
like 21.
Yep. Yeah. And so I don't think he's going to be horrible. I think he's going to find his footing. I think he's playing very fast right now and just playing rushed and trying to rush the ball out of his hands, which forces him into bad decisions. So I think that overall he'll get his footing under him. And I think that Shane Steichen's the perfect guy to, help him do that. In terms of the defense for the Steelers right now, I mean, it's first almost across the board. They're first in EPA per play right now. They are 6th in success rate. Points per game, they're first. Yards per game, they're first. So overall, this is the best unit they've had in a very long time. I think that overall, though, when you look at the run game for the Steelers, I see a lot of like national folks be like, "Oh man, the Steelers are just going to try to run that ball. It's going to be hard for the Colts to stop." Steelers' run game hasn't been all that great this year. It's more of a volume stat that they've had a lot of rushing yards. But if you look at rushing success rate for them right now, they're 30th in the league, only ahead of the Raiders and the Bears. So that's the thing that I'm worried about a little bit here. Isaac Samalo's questionable. If they get Isaac Samalo back on the left side, then I think they'll be able to run the ball a lot better than they have. He's their best run blocker by wide margin, and they've had to rotate like Spencer Anderson there, Mason McCormick there. So we'll see if he plays. Then I'll feel a lot more confident in their ability to run the ball. Also, DeForest Buckner not playing for the Colts, so that plays into Pittsburgh's hand. Everything about this game, says the Steelers should win it. And I'm not trying to be like a downer fan or anything like that, but I don't know. I just talked about this with JP Acosta on my pod. It's like, do the Steelers feel like a 4-0 team to me? I don't know. I feel like the Colts feel like kind of like a 2-2 team to me. It's just like one of those things where like every analytic, everything that, on paper, whatnot says, yeah, the Steelers should probably win this. The better coach, better overall defense, better overall players. I think they should win, but like, are they going to let one slip away? I think eventually they're obviously going to drop one. Is it going to be on the road at Indy? Certainly a possibility. But Justin Fields so far playing well, getting better as the weeks go on. We saw Calvin Austin kind of step up as, we talked about the receivers needed to have another guy step up, and Calvin Austin did. So George Pickens is still getting his. We're seeing Cordero Patterson get introduced more into the offense. He had a really instrumental part in helping them close the deal last week on that last drive. So, like I said, everything about this game says the Steelers should win, especially because Anthony Richardson leads the NFL in interceptions thrown to this point. Minka Fitzpatrick doesn't have one of those big splash plays yet, but he's had a really good year thus far. I'm kind of anticipating this being the week that he gets that interception, just because if there's anybody who can bait a young quarterback into making mistakes, it's Minka. So kind of waiting and seeing if that happens this week and hoping it does, so they can, as long as they protect the football and they can get takeaways, they should win the game. But it's one of those things where I'm going to be like, all right, if they lose to the Colts, if it's close, I'm not going to be like super upset about it. They're still going to be a 3-1 team going into week 5, which I can live with. They should win. I'm just being very cautious just because I've seen this time and time again.
You sound a little down there.
No, like I said, I'm on cloud 9 right now. I didn't expect 3-0. So I think I'm just kind of like very happy, but also just cautious of eventually they're going to drop one. And that's the thing. Like when they do drop one, if it's this week, I'm not going to freak out, especially like I said, if it's a close game. It's what it is. They're not going to go 17-0. But if they can be 3-1 after 4 games, that's great. And then you go into a stretch of you play Dallas, you play both New York teams, then you play the Raiders. So like they still have a lot of winnable games here in front of them. Where if they lose one, okay, I'm expecting them to drop one soon. So if it's this one, whatever. If Anthony Richardson kind of has a game where he snaps out of this funk and has a long touchdown pass over the top, whatever. So be it. I'm just kind of preparing myself for it rather than getting too far over. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to get too high because I know a lot of fans are going to get too high.
Expectations.
Like, this team is so great, Super Bowl bound. I'm like, all right, let's pump the brakes a little bit. I'm just being a little bit more on the realistic side of things where I can be happy. I'm happy they're 3-0, but also understand that all right, eventually they're going to drop one, and if they do, it's not the end of the world. So
I heard it from Steelers fans, Super Bowl year. I already heard it.
Yeah, I mean, you hear that from every fan base every year, though, man. Like it's just fandom.
I've been a fan of some Browns teams where nobody ever uttered.
That's fair. That's a good point. I don't think anybody was going into Deshaun Kaiser being like, "Yeah, this is the year." So that's
no. Some people were. Some people were going into.
Right.
They thought Deshaun Kaiser would see. It's the young guy gives you hope. It's when you're starting Josh McCown. It's like where it's like, okay, well,
this is Josh McCown.
Let's just have fun this year.
Sure. Fair enough. So all that to say, I think the Steelers should win this game. I think it's going to be a little bit closer than I think it's projected to be close. I think the Steelers are only a 1.5 favorites. So Vegas sees it as a close game. The Steelers also always just play close games though. So again, they should win this game, but I'm not going to, come on here Tuesday, Wednesday and just be like, oh my God, the world's over. Season's done. They're 3-1. Like, as long as they keep it close, they play a respectable game. Even if they do lose, I'll be in good spirits.
Do you have any score prediction?
Oh man, if they win, it's going to be like 16-13. I think either way it'll be like anywhere between a 16-13 to 20-17, something like that.
Gotcha.
But I will say, if Richardson does continue to turn the ball over and the Steelers start to turn some of those field goals into touchdowns, then it could be something that's like, all right, 24-10, 27-13, somewhere in that range. But got to stop Jonathan Taylor on the ground. They've been able to stop the run game so far. They just held the number one rushing team and the Chargers to 61 yards on the ground. So I have full faith that they can do that. It's just a matter of, all right, don't turn the ball over, continue to progress in efficiency offensively, and don't let Anthony Richardson do some freaky stuff and beat you. As long as they can do that, they'll be fine.